the different changes that have taken place. But what I do know is that they can be mitigated, they can be turned around, support services are needed, and information needs to be shared to people.
Okay, awesome, awesome. Thank you so much. And I just want to remind everybody that we are finally recording on Zoom. We've been on Facebook. And Rachel, can you introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Rachel. I am a community organizer. Sorry, I'm getting multiple feedback. Working on two systems.
Okay.
My name is Rachel Williams. I am a 29-year-old organizer from the South Side. Particularly, I grew up in Cottage Grove Heights in Rosemore. And so I've been doing this work for about 8 years now. Working around from doing little work from the Trauma Center campaign, the reparations ordinance, and community organizing around Rakia Boyd. And I am the creator of the Say Her Name campaign. So I'm just getting back from Louisville working on the Breonna Taylor case. We have to also understand that when we talk about community, it is a neighborhood. And it's okay to say it's the hood. I think when we dehumanize and sit there and say, like, we can't use these words, like hood or ghetto, I think we take away the context of the research that have been starved out of them. And we have to understand what white supremacy have done to put us in these situations where we have been starved of resources.
Okay, awesome, awesome. So the way this works is each of you is going to be asked 3 questions, and they're going to be the same questions. So we're going to have like mini interviews of each one of you. And then if our other guests don't come on, we're going to open it up, all right, for more free discussion. So Sai, we'll start with you. What is the most urgent area that you believe needs correcting?
So if I can clarify, Valerie, are you asking in the South Shore community or citywide? I know this is about citywide, what's going on. So
you know, I think it would be helpful if you could speak globally, and I'm not necessarily talking about literally globally, you know, speak to the Black community. And then if you want to cite examples from South Shore, that would be really helpful, because we do want to understand, you know, what's going on in each community, but we also want to be able to, you know, speak globally to the Black community.
So I think that globally, what I see as one of the most pressing issues that we're having right now is the issues of safety and security in our community. And that safety and security is around our women, our men, our children, our Black people across the board. And I singled them out, you know, to separate them, because each demographic, well, not each demographic, each age range, they are facing particular types of challenges right now. Our children are facing challenges.
I already know.
Our women are facing challenges, you know, with just their everyday life, trying to get back to and fro to work and in their natural environment and the safety of that. Our men are facing, you know, the policing issues, as well as our women are facing issues. Our seniors are facing issues of safety and security as well. So in order for us to look at how to fix everything else that's going on financially, socially, all of those structural ills, until you can feel safe in your environment, until you can feel safe personally, walking out your door, standing in front of your home, anywhere you are, in your car, it doesn't matter. Until you can feel safe, you can't go to the next step. You can't make money. You can't go to your job not feeling safe, because it brings up all of the other issues that, well, that come along with not feeling safe: the stress, the anxiety, the depression, the mental illness.
Okay, so
I would say
anything is being done to correct it at all as you see, or is there no action?
I think that some things are being done to correct it, but they are minimal. And so the things that I think that are being done across the board to correct them are being done in our communities and not being done on a wide spread. And that's why we have movements like Rachel is involved in. Now, I've met Rachel before, and so you have people who are out in movements where we're saying we have to say her name. We're talking about Rakia Boyd. We're talking about all of the women who are missing. And we're talking about our kids being shot in the street. We're talking about our men still being killed by police. So though we as community members and social service agencies are striving to put things into place that'll make the community safer, and that's everything from putting organizations into place, safe streets into place, safe play into place. Those things we can only do on a small scale because we don't have the type of finance and money that these larger organizations have across the board. So it does not allow us to do what we need to do globally for our community.
Okay, awesome. You know what, that segues into the third question. You know, what do you think needs to be done in order to ensure a better outcome?
In order to ensure a better outcome, for one thing, we need financing. We need financing in our community. We have got to hold the banks. We have got to hold the large corporations. We've got to hold the federal government. We have to hold them responsible for putting more money into the communities that need them. Even here in the city of Chicago, the TIF dollars, the monies that are being exploited are being taken and put in neighborhoods that don't have a need for them. They're beautifying communities where there are communities in our areas that are simply blighted and they're being put on a back burner. We'll get to you in the 2050 plan. CMAP has a plan for that, but by the time they get to that plan, a whole nother decade of people will have passed and children would have lived in blight and disrepair. So it's not that there isn't a plan for it, it's just not being applied for us.
Right. All right, so Rachel, the same set of questions for you. The first question is, you know, what's the most urgent area that needs correcting?
Well, for me, I look at policing. I am a prison and police abolitionist. I believe in defunding the state. And when those problems are dealt with, when more resources are pulled back into the community, that's where a lot of our issues are dealt with. So for me, I look at it like this. When we take the money, for instance, here in the city of Chicago, the police department gets 40% of the budget a day. Only 23% of that is they are actually what they're operating on a day. The rest of it they do for over surveillance, all of it. But we have instances of crime. There's no reason on Juneteenth weekend we had over 100 people shot, but we have these cameras that are cosmetics. We have spot shooters that can detect bullets, but we're having acts of violence. But also we have to get to the root cause of a lot of it. We have post-traumatic stress syndrome. We have it. And I don't even think it's hard to say post-traumatic when you are still going through it.
Right.
So we have a situation where many kids are dealing with it. I'm a debate coach on the west side of Chicago in Austin. Most of my debaters are what you consider kids who would not particularly be debate students. And so when we see those lack of resources, but you see the over-policing, but then their schools being starved, then you have to put a correlation from the over-policing that is happening from what's happening in housing, education, jobs, and so forth and so on. So one of the reasons that we have to address is really the police budget and what is really going to necessities. Because again, like I said, much of the money is not going to local organizations, and organizations that are on the ground that have been doing the work for years, and they're scrapping by because the community believes in them. But when the community doesn't have a pot to piss in and window to throw it out of, the organization isn't going to have a pot to piss in and a window to throw it out of.
Yes. So what do you see being done right now to correct the problem?
Well, so I've been in Louisville for the last month and a half.
Mhm.
I came on to the Breonna Taylor case at the end of March,
Mhm.
working with local organizers down in Louisville. But one of the things that I was able to see in Louisville, like we have here in Chicago, we have the Chicago Community Bond Fund. And
Mhm.
what happens is that the community bonds folks out. And it's been a rhetoric that David Brown, uh, former Superintendent McCarthy, and former Superintendent Eddie Johnson and the mayor have used to dehumanize this bond fund. But one of the things that we do see, specifically in Louisville, what they're doing is they not only bail folks out, but they have a wraparound service. So they are making sure folks have housing, so they're not pushed back into the prison industrial complex. They're making sure that families who are struggling and have social service issues, for instance, mom or father gets locked up, now there's a case where DCFS has to come in. So they make sure and stabilize. They have therapists, they have counselors, they also have Reiki healers and acupuncturists who come into the Black community and do the work. And these are Black folks who are reflective. And that's one of the things that I want to see come back here. I actually joked to say that I was stealing a bunch of the stuff they were doing in Louisville to bring it back, because when the community is being dealt with on a holistic level, that is where the healing begins.
Mhm.
That is where the trauma and addressing the trauma of the intercommunity violence begins. And where we are able to believe in protecting each other, that is where we can live in a state where policing does not exist.
Mhm. Okay, I think that was really, really interesting. We were expecting two other guests. They may join us later, but it looks like we're also have been joined by Deborah. Deborah, you had a chance to listen, and I know I'm putting you on the spot. What are some of your thoughts as to what our most pressing issues are?
Okay, yes. Um, what immediately comes to my mind is poverty and job opportunity.
Mhm.
And with that, I include Black business, small businesses, and other businesses returning to our community. And we have empower in our own community, whether it's policing, accountability, responsibility. And I think that gives hope. And I think a lot of the shooting and different other negative aspects that we are observing has a lot to do with the lack of hope. And which could be banking and all that stuff as it relates to businesses. So I think if we return the power back that we have some power, and then we can demand more. And when I say we have some power in voting, whether it's alderman, mayor, voting our interests, and we will reclaim more and more power. And that's what I'd say. Because I thought long and hard, like I guess you guys have as well. When we see these weekend numbers of shootings and killings, and to realize that there are communities that that's not happening in, right?
Right.
There are communities that are not experiencing that at all. And so I thought about it. What's the difference between that community and, let's say, the Austin community?
Okay, Deborah, can I have you pause right there before you say anything else? We know your name, but can you give us a few sentences about your background and what brings you here?
Okay. I live in Auburn Gresham community. I'm a
Okay.
Chicago public school teacher
Mm-hmm.
and a mother. And I call myself an activist. I like to attach myself to progressive causes, right? And
Mm-hmm.
to bring about change. So I was going to also say education. As a teacher, I find a lot of apathy.
Mm-hmm.
I won't say parents are not concerned, because everybody wants themselves and their children and their families to succeed. But what I will say is I witnessed in my role as a teacher apathy, educational apathy. There was a time my mother was not very educated. She came from the South, but she um, made it her business to make sure that her kids were at all costs. You
Mm-hmm.
understand what I mean? And I'm one of 12. My parents had 12 children, and you know from times past, parents could barely read, but they would save money. I don't care if it was $1 a week to make sure
Right.
that the children had a better life than they did.
Okay, awesome. So in your observation, what do you see being done to correct some of the problems that you see?
Well, I will say I'm guardedly optimistic. I'll just use Kim Fox. I watch a lot of PBS, and Kim Fox, when she was went to her reelection bid, she noticed the mass incarceration is only on one side, and the ills that affect our community become criminalized. She brought up something like shoplifting, or what, it could be marijuana, it could be small things that are given harsher penalties for blacks. And I believe we are on a slow road to recovery, when people that look like us and that are concerned and share our background become in power.
Yeah, my stupid computer
Alright, great.
internet is spinning around.
And
So,
if you were to, what do you think needs
Yeah,
to be
I'm
done to
rebooting.
get a better outcome?
oh, okay. Okay, yeah, you ready?
I want to go back to poverty, job opportunity, black businesses. We recently celebrated Juneteenth, and that shouldn't be just one day. So I was looking for places that I could go to, maybe to get a cake baked. There are places like that, but I mean, we need more power. I'll say more power in our community, because we sit and discuss the ills. But if we were in control of, we know best what we need, right?
Right.
And I think we respect each other. So I would say, I would bring it back to job opportunity, business wise as well. Our banks and everything. Because that may be, when I say no job opportunity, no black business, that's still us going to ask somebody, can you give me this? Right? And crossing our fingers that they would give us what they out to everybody else, right?
Okay. All right. I think that's been
Okay, it's 852.
We've got a really good group, and I'm pretty sure we're going to be joined by others. But while we're waiting for others, I'm going to open this up, and we'll have a little free discussion. So, Sai, based on some of the things that you've heard, what might be some of your responses? Where do we go from here?
It sounded like he was on another call or something.
Yeah, Sai Lewis. Yes. Yeah, we have two
It's
sides.
showing as chocolate girl, because I don't know how to change that. Yeah. I need my little brother to do my chocolate, well, at any rate. So what I think that, here are the things that I think are happening right now that are helpful. The cannabis, the tax money that's coming from cannabis, the $300 million that was spent in cannabis, and the money that they're pouring into grants like the R3 grant. So the ability to go from being an activist to turning and activating your passion into a business by turning it into a nonprofit, so that you have more of an ability to have a say by being able to back your passion with funding, and thereby giving yourself more opportunity to move forward. So that's something that I'm really feeling like we're missing in this. We have a lot of community activists in the Chicago area. None of them have, moved forward with making the decision to become a nonprofit or become an organization, or getting together themselves and then becoming an organization or a nonprofit. Just getting those people together who have those same like-minded ideas, those people who are focused on education, those people who are focused on crime, so that they can then go after these grants and they can go after these fundings that say, okay, we are going to tackle this issue in our community. We're going to tackle the issue around crime prevention or recidivism, mental wellness, or whatever. So we show up and we show out, but we have to sit down at the table and file the paperwork to make ourselves formal so that our voices are heard in a way that we can be more impactful, so that we can go to the bank and we can say that, Chase Bank, you've been in the community, you haven't been giving back to the community, you said you're going to do this, this is this nonprofit organization, this is what we're working on in this very community that you're in, how much money are you putting in? I don't mean how many hundreds of dollars are you putting in, how much money are you putting in?
Okay, so let's let Rachel respond to what you've just said. I think that was really interesting. Rachel, how would you respond to what Sai just shared with us?
Well, one of the things is that there are I don't consider myself an activist. I'm more of an organizer. Activists are folks who jump in the moment. Organizers tend to be working on the long game. And so there's a difference between us. But what happens is that we do have organizers or activists who choose to jump in the moment and not think about the long game. And those are the ones who we see in front all the time. For me, I think we need to make organizations, yes. I'm actually in the process of putting my own organization together, which is after my little cousin who was killed by intracommunity violence in 2017. She was also 11 years old, but she was also a community organizer. So when we do that work, when we actually put our resources together, yes, we can be a benefit. And that's one of the experiences that, we do need to have a conversation and come to the table. But folks, specifically here in Chicago, try to think off of egoism, and that tends to destroy a lot of the work that can be done, because some folks rather be in the front, and then they're fighting to be Jesse and Al, but they ain't done the work to be neither.
Right.
Or they haven't even done the work to be Martin, let alone Jesse or Al. And so we mess up with the egoism and all of it. We choose to have organizers or activists who then try to move to the next politician to have them so they're in their back pocket. We see it time and time again. I'm the youngest person on this panel, but we have organizers or activists who are in the pocket of Lori Lightfoot. We have who were also in the pocket of Rahm. And so they choose to work on what benefits them instead of what benefits the community as a collective whole. And one thing I do say is that one of the reasons why we have a lot of issues in our communities is that we try to condition ourselves to operate off of individualism, and try to operate off of whiteness. And culturally, historically, ancestrally, we have never been able to operate off of that. We are not a people of a nuclear family household. We are people who believe in a village. And that means aunties, uncles, play cousins, play aunties, play uncles who help rear the children and guide the children, but also guide the work of the parents who step in when the parents cannot. And so we have to get back to that. And that's one of the reasons why. Yeah.
Okay. We have been joined by Robert. Robert, you want to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself, what community you're from, and what brings you to this particular conversation?
Well, yes, my name is Robert Moore. My organization is United Communities, and we work with ex-offenders and veterans with employment and education. United for Better Communities also is working to actually create infrastructure so that our community will be more effective in what they do. It's all being scattered and not having a central location to take care of our business. We're fragmented. And so that's my life work, is to actually create basically a Pentagon so that we all will have a space, we can work together, collaborate, and of course, have answers, answers, and then have some power. Because of the lack of unity, we have a lack of power. And so I come to this conversation through Cy Smith, and he knows and understands what I've been doing for many, many years. And, you know, it's just time now. And I hope to be able to do whatever I can to help others as well with their mission. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you for joining us. We've got 3 questions for you. We're going to ask you the same 3 questions that we asked the other guests. And the first one is, what is the most urgent area that needs correcting? And we're talking about in the Black community in general. And if there are some examples that you want to share from your own community, you can.
Well, you know, I'm kind of skewed in that all my efforts has to do with creating infrastructure.
Okay.
Period. I mean, I understand that, you know, all these other muscles have to work in order for us to move our body. But overall, I just believe that we must create the skeleton so then we can attach the muscles and then move the body. So, you know, I think everybody at the table is operating their muscle. But because of a lack of, you know, a space, a lack of funding, you know, a lack of communication and teamwork and lawyers and CPAs and project managers. And without these things, it's just, I think we just disjointed. So to me, it's just a lack of infrastructure.
That's a really good point, because you can't create a sustainable movement if you don't have infrastructure. So do you see that there's anything being done to address that issue at all?
No, I do not. Other than, you know, it's a small group of us, and now we're working to with this new mayor and this governor and Brett Winkle. I've done my runaround to all the aldermen year after year after year. You're wasting your time because they got no power. So we are going to have to work together and come together and agree that, hey, in order to make this work, we are going to have to go to the powers that be to get it done.
Okay. And then what else do you think needs to be done in order to get a better outcome than what we've been getting? I mean, you talked about the need to build infrastructure, and you talked about the need to go, you know, to the top, you know, to the powers that be. Do you see anything else that needs to be done?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of pockets right now. It's being loosed up. A lot of people are talking about they're going to give and they're going to invest in the Black community. And so I think us having a plan to put ourselves in a position to receive those funds would be real important right now.
Yes, yes, yes. All righty. And Rachel, did you want to comment?
I mean, yeah, he's right. There is not a lot of power that is given. Well, there is some power given to the alderman, but it just depends on who the alderman likes, who the alderman is trying to push, and that becomes a disconnect. And so, I mean, what can we do? You know, I live in the 9th Ward. We've tried to push our alderman out several times, and he stays in the same situation. But then you go into Roseland, you go into North Pullman, which is a national landmark status, and you still see the devastation that's happened in North Pullman. Many of those homes were vacant. Many of those homes are still boarded up. But then you have 111th to 115th that is invested in. And that's only invested in because white folks with money live there. And they don't have to see the violence. They don't have to see the incarceration. They don't have to deal with half of what we have to deal with 4 blocks or 3.5 blocks down. So he's right. And so what needs to happen is that collectively, I think there does need to be a bigger push for voter engagement. And how do we get to that point? But also push policy that benefits Black people across the board.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that is great. Now, this question is for Robert, and I'll ask each one of you too what your thoughts are. What role can the larger society play?
Well, I think that they would be more apt to coming to help us if we had a place for them to interact with us. We are so scattered and spotted. You know, the University of Chicago do their thing, Northwestern doing their thing, Chicago State for the lack of what they are doing. So it's a matter of where do we meet even to do anything else. Other people, I think, will come and help and bring some things to bear. But there again, how do you galvanize them? How do you bring them together? The Pentagon is operated because once it gets its orders, everyone who has something to bring to the table execute. And so we got folks who got money, who got folks who I believe would do some things for us, but because they're, again, you know, we all over the place. But I just think it's important for us to start somewhere. You know, even right now, if we would go to the mayor and say, look, you know, we need a school, you know, just to get started. You really need two, because you need one on the south side and one on the west side. And I'm sure everybody understands this territorial type attitude that we have. But those are the things we'll do. To bring people to help us, we got to create the space, is really what I'm saying, for them to come and help us.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Cy Lewis, what are your thoughts on how do we attract people from, you know, the larger society to help us?
I think that one of the things that they're looking for, the larger society, we have to embrace the fact that we're trying to help, of course, our race, and that we're going to need help from, I would say, outliers, people who are not of our race and our culture. But they have to see that we have a plan. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And people are not going to pour into something that is not planned. And as you know, everyone on this panel knows, because as we organize, as we activate, you know, as we work in any industry, you can't go to the next step without laying out a plan for something. So having a plan and a way to get to the next step. I think that we have a plan. I think that Block Club University is a beginning, for a great beginning for the plan, because it holds you to individual accountability. Mm-hmm. And it's got to start at the individual. So individual accountability at the Block Club level takes us to the community level, takes us to the hood level, takes us, you know, to the city level. I think it was Rachel who just mentioned, you know, we can't move an alderman out who clearly only is concerned about one particular area of the community. And we hear that mantra all over the city. You'll get an alderman, they'll pick one area that they're going to take care of, and that's going to be it. Well, everybody votes that alderman in. So then how do we galvanize that community? How do we galvanize those people to say, this is not what we want for ourselves anymore? We've got to turn this around. And we see that having an alderman, any politician in office for an extended period of time has not served us as a community. So we know that we can just grab everybody by the bull by the horns at one time. It goes back to the Block Club University. And then how do we get funding for things? It goes back to Block Club University. Who is pouring into that? A dollar.
Wow.
99 pennies, and the one you find on the couch.
I love it. I love it. Okay, Rachel, how do you respond? What can the larger society do to help us?
Well, so I also come from a Pan-African ideology where I work from the idea of not the larger society, but us working within each other. But also as a Chicago State student in the nursing program, our school is accessible and open. And also pretty much all of the nursing department, nursing students, we all have to be relegated to working, doing work study in the library. Library has open space, has 4 floors, 2 of which are study rooms that can be reserved. Study rooms that are big enough to have these conversations. We have the auditorium that's big enough to have these conversations. It's just about talking to the right people to have it done. And one of the things I do say, and I work, and when I think of community, I think of using all of our resources. Chicago State has operated, specifically I'm talking about Chicago State, has operated as a Black institution for decades. And we've grown up the nurses, the teachers who have educated generations of CPS students within CPS, now that it's been gutted. But Chicago State is also a symptom of the symptoms of the politics that are happening within the city. Chicago State is a Black school that is predominantly Black. So of course it's being divested in, and that's a reflection of the community that it surrounds. Literally a bus ride away from Chicago State. And so when we talk about divestment, we have to talk about Chicago State. We have to talk about the schools that are around Chicago State. There's no reason that 1, Chicago State, Olive Harvey, 2 higher education institutions have completely been divested in, but our students who are high school age don't want to go to either one because they've been divested in, because they know that the resources that have been divested from their communities are reflective of the institutions that exist within their communities. And so we have to have that conversation. But for me, I look at it like this. I don't look at University of Chicago to lend a hand in the issues of Black folks because it's helping expedite the removal of Black folks. So that's one conversation. I don't look at Northwestern either because those are institutions that are expediting the removal of Black folks from the city. So when we have that conversation, I don't want to lean on University of Chicago. I want to lean on the institutions that have benefited us the most. And Chicago State has always been a welcoming community, welcoming space for the community to be able to use its resources. But also, we need to pull in. One of the things that I remember growing up as a student was that when you had the smart ones, we were told that go to school, get your education, and leave the hood. But what the teachers fail to realize and tell us is that when we leave, we're taking the resources with us because we are a resource, and that every individual is a resource, and that we benefit the ecosystem of the community by staying and working for it and working to build a better community. One of the things that we have to deal with is environmental issues. So in this city, we have a whole scale of issues that are affecting Black folks, pre-COVID and post-COVID. So Black folks are dying because of COVID, because of the pre-morbidity costs, but then also understanding that many of us live in neighborhoods that are considered toxic donuts or EPA brown zones. Specifically, everything from on 119th by Marshfield Plaza is considered EPA brown zone, meaning nothing should be living or growing over there. But there are a population of folks who are living in Roseland who are there, or Morgan Park or wherever you want to consider it, but they're dying. So one, for me, I look at it like this: pull in the resources, bring back urban gardening, bring back doulas, bring back midwives, and deal with it as a holistic level. We have to deal with the trauma. So it's not about bringing in the outliers who don't know our culture, because those are the ones who affect us the most, from education to the DCFS system, because they don't know our culture, ends up being a penalization on us. So I don't want to reach out. I want to reach within our communities because we exist and the resources exist within us.
Okay, great. So Robert, what say you?
Well, I mean, I love the idea that they understand that everything we have, everything that we need, we have.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, it's a misnomer to make the statement that we need this. We got everything we need. I mean, we have the minds, we have the people who have the passion, and the expertise to do everything that needs to be done in the Black community. I've tried to work with Chicago State, and when I ran into, not being able to do the things that I wanted to do, but and I was about just bringing the community together and getting us to focus. There is so much money all over the world, and we as Black people never ask for it. And that's one of the troubling things for me, is that we need the tools, and to show folks it. And another, one of the young ladies mentioned the plan, where we call it the Marshall Plan. I've been dealing with this 22 years at least. So, the Marshall Plan, we have the Afro-American plan, Reven. So we got a lot of plans. So it's just a matter now of us just coming together and let everybody focus on what they focus on. That's another thing too. We got a habit of everybody trying to do everybody's job. And the truth of the matter is, let people do what God has touched them to do. Let them do that. But then we have to create the support system. I mean, like I said earlier, they're gonna need lawyers, CPA. They were talking about the brown zone, talking about the bad neighborhood. We need a construction company. We should be training people that's in prison. I'm going to the governor and tell the governor straight up, Governor, I'm ready to hire 10,000 people that you got locked up, but I need to have them trained while they're there. So we need to build a housing factory on the inside of the prison, and we will be training them. We'll bring the union along, let the union do the training, let the union take the cream of the crop. I don't care. I'm trying to create jobs. And then, of course, we then will be able to go and clean up our own neighborhood, tear it down and rebuild it. So we got everything we need, and I'm just hoping and praying that we can, somewhere along the line, focus, even if it's a Chicago State. Then if it's Chicago State, then let it be. Let's go there and say, look, we need space. We need it every day. Literally, we need it 7 days a week. The infrastructure I'm talking about is 24-hour operation, but you got to start somewhere. So they allow us to come once a week, twice a week, whatever the case may be, just so we can come together and understand how do we bring everybody together. And then, of course, let me tell you something about aldermen. Aldermen's not afraid of us because basically we vote for them, but we don't put any pressure on them. We put them in the office and they go downtown and do the white folks' bidding, and we still at home suffering. So with the proper infrastructure, then we will be able then to work with the aldermen in any way that they will understand this is the ordinance that we need, and we need it done now. For instance, right now, there's an ordinance that talks about Lopez, I think it's the 15th ward, that's going to committee now, has to do with Blacks getting 30%, Hispanics 29%, females getting 10%. That's getting ready to go forward right now to the committee to get it and bring it up for a vote. But because we're so disjointed, we as a whole, although all of us would benefit from it, so then we can use Chicago State to do work like that, just to create all of the ordinances that need to be created and babysit them. See, can anybody even tell me where in the United States of America does Black folks have a headquarters? It does not exist. And that blows my mind. We 46 million plus. We do not have a place that we can even call a headquarters to manage our affairs and to know the lay of the land. The federal government got all this money for all kinds of things, but we never asked for it. Grants that we could apply for it. So to me, that's why infrastructure is so important. And once the aldermen understand that this infrastructure has made a demand, I can assure you they would do what they need to do, because they understand that there's a force that has not existed, now exists, and is making demand to the mayor, governors would start respecting it. But right now, we're so cut up in pieces, we're so divided, and so it just creates a problem for us. And aldermen should be voting as one block, and they don't do it.
Alrighty, so we have all of 8 minutes to go. We're gonna wind down. And our last question for each of you, have we missed anything today? And if so, what have we missed? And how do we pull it all together? So we'll start with you, Cy Lewis. And then after Cy will be Rachel, and Robert, you'll have the last word.
Thank you.
Well, I'd like to say, I'd like to bring it back to South Shore. South Shore has, according to the last census, a little over 51,000 residents. And out of that 51,000 residents, just in my ward, not all of South Shore, because South Shore comprises 4 different wards.
Wow.
So part of the 7th, part of the 10th, part of the 5th, and part of the 8th. Okay. And so you got 51,000 people in just the 7th ward. And less than 10,000 people voted.
Wow.
Okay. So if you say that 10,000 people are the people who are active in the community and the things that go on around their neighborhoods and their community, how do we then activate the other 40,000 people, not just in South Shore, but those other people, those other 40s of 30s of 20s of 60s of thousands of people in these other wards? We've got 77 communities, and the majority of the people in the community are not active. So you basically have a 10th of a community that's pulling in and pulling all of the weight to try to get things changed. We have got to deal with people on their doorsteps where they are at, because everything that is affecting our community is affecting them once they go in that door and close it.
Mm-hmm.
That's where their poverty is being affected. That's where their mental health, their lack of wellness, their lack of. And so our outreach has to be to our community as a whole, because we can't keep putting bandages on everything.
Mm-hmm.
And all of the other social ills is a culmination of those things that are happening at those separate homes.
Okay, awesome. Rachel, have we missed anything today? And if so, what have we missed? And where do we take it from here?
One of the things I do say is that a lot of times we have these conversations and we forget to ask the generation who's coming up next. As much as I say, and folks say I'm a youth, I'm almost 30. I'll literally be 30 next year.
Whoa!
And I have students who I organize. I have students who are as young as 12. I have organizers who are young as 12. And so a lot of times they are forgotten out of the conversation, and they have the, I say they have the mental capacity, because a lot of folks sit there and say, you're young, you're dumb, and stupid. And they tend to forget that a lot of these kids know what they're talking about because they've seen it. They know what their communities needs. They know what the resources need to be. And so we have to just listen. And a lot of times we aren't. We're talking over them. We're talking for them instead of talking to them. And that tends to be one of the reasons why. That a lot of us are, like Sai said, if you have 30, for Ninth Ward, we had like 32,000 registered voters. Less than half will vote in the automatic or even in a presidential. So, or if they vote, they forget, they don't vote for the policies that affect them the most, or they vote off of name recognition. So we live in that system where folks are apathetic, not only to voting, to education, to all of it. And when we have that, because we have a lack of sense of community, and that breakdown of it tends to feed into the issues that we're having, that we no longer want to talk to each other. We rather post on Facebook instead of having a conversation with the next door neighbor, or we're having a conversation with the next door neighbor when a kid then threw their bike or bumped into my car. Now I want to argue with you, but we can't even sit there and say, how you doing, when they walk out the door and we walk out the door. So it has to get back to community. And that's one of the things we're forgetting as well.
Okay, great. Thank you. Robert, bring us home. We got 3 minutes. And basically, from what you can hear, did we miss anything today? If so, what was it that we missed, and where do we go from here?
Well, I don't think we missed much. The conversation has been very strong. Yes, for the times that I've been a part of it. She made a very good point about how do we connect to these individuals. Literally, we got to go door from door and ask people a simple question, I think. What do you want? Or shall I say, what do you need? And what do you want? And I think, and then let them answer that, sit down with them and write that out. And then say, will you help me to help you? And once they agree to that and put a contract together, get them to sign it, basically saying, in order for you to help me, I know that I need to do this, this, and this. And we'll come up with that. You need me to vote. You need me to show up at rallies. And then once they have their individual plan laid out what they need, then we start attacking all the resources that exist to make that happen for them. And I think that's what's gonna be the key. I mean, because now I'm in your face, I'm holding your hand, I'm showing you that I care. Now I can get you to move. Because at the end of the day, we got the database that Smith has put together. Now we know who you are, we know where you are, and we decide, okay, good. We finna exchange this alderman here because you have needs. This alderman has not done what you need, or this mayor, or this state representative. So we're gonna replace them with this person. Will you help me help you? And I think, my goodness, that'll just change the dynamics of what's been going on with this voting. Thank you.
Okay, awesome. I want to thank all of our panelists. You have had some really wonderful insights. I want to thank Cy Smith again for inviting us all. And Cy, I know you didn't necessarily want to speak, but this is your show, whether you said anything or not. And I'm talking to Cy Smith now. Did you want to share any closing remarks?
Well, Valerie, we didn't hear enough from you. I wanted you to kind of tell everyone what you do, especially over at DePaul. But I just want you guys to know personally, thank you for your Friday evening, spending it with us. And you guys already know, we talk all the time. This isn't it. This is just what we're showcasing to the city of Chicago. We're in the weeds, and we're going to work stronger together, I imagine, so that we can just make all of this stuff we're speaking about come to fruition block by block. So I'm excited. Cy Lewis and she connected me with some people where her connections in Macon, Mississippi, because this weekend, this Sunday is Mount Bayou's birthday. That's the first Black town in America. So we should, like all Blacks should know, this was a town, July 12, 1887. You know, it's time to invest in Mississippi. But Valerie, can you close us out with just what you do, because you didn't speak about that, being a professor, adjunct professor at DePaul.
Oh, okay. All right, sure. I'm Valerie Leonard, and I'm actually not at DePaul, even though I've done some work with them. I'm not an instructor there. I am on staff at University of Illinois at Chicago, working with their nonprofit management program. I've taught courses in nonprofit operations, finance, government grants, strategic planning. And I'm also on staff at Roosevelt, teaching social entrepreneurship. So I have a good vantage point where I can bring the business stuff and the nonprofit stuff together and look at things a little bit more holistically. So that's kind of, that's what I do, I guess, in terms of the institutions. But I also have Nonprofit Utopia, which is an online community of folks who want to develop their own nonprofits. And in fact, Cy Lewis is a part of that community. So we do the online community, we're doing some coaching, as well as consulting and all that good stuff. So this wasn't really about me. It was
now Valerie, also tell people how far back we go with your dad.
yeah. Sai and I have only been knowing each other 2 years. Yeah, we go. Well, Sai and I go back way back. He was one of my dad's students at Gregory School in Lawndale, so we knew each other before we met, if that makes any sense. And he and I met in Lawndale. I was running small grants, it's a neighborhood grant making group. And Sai was already, one of the folks who had gotten a grant. And he was light years ahead of himself, with Black Club University. In fact, I don't even know if it was called Black Club University then. That was like the second phase. I forgot what the first phase was. And then he took a citywide, and now it's a national thing. But, he is light years ahead of, most folks. And, we're always trying to catch up. But the bottom line is, nobody's going to do anything for us but us, and when people do help us, it's nothing wrong with leveraging the institutions and all that good stuff. But if we don't, as Cy Lewis was saying, if we don't have a plan for ourselves, then the best laid plans could get taken over by the institutions, and we end up being pushed out by our own plans. And of course, I don't have any experience with that. That's another show. That's another show.
Oh, Lord.
So thank you, Valerie. You did a wonderful job. Thank you for keeping the conversation flowing. And because of block infrastructure, that day is coming when we're going to be able to collect dollars block by block and put it into each of you guys' organizations to take it to the next level, give it extra gumph to what you're already doing. So unless you guys have anything else, thank you for taking time out on Friday night.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. I look forward to doing it again very soon, Sai. We have lots to cover.
Oh, you already know, Si. Thank you.
Well, I'll say
thank you, guys.